thing in there.
Look at all those books you got.
I've actually got a problem, I think.
What? Not enough books.
I mean, like a lot of these, I haven't read them for like donkey's years.
Like the thing is, I can see just from the outline of your books. I can see the outline of your books, what they are. Because I know, because I've got them. I can see, I can recognise them immediately just from the spines and stuff. It's like, that's quite bad, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's good. Good, isn't it? Means we're on the same page.
Okay, we're live now. We're live now. So we are live now. So
we're live.
The simple method. Okay, right. So I'm going to introduce the event. If only 3 minutes behind, so that's okay. So we're here today. We're at the Poets Live with Z.D. Dix, the Gloucestershire Poet Laureate, and JL Morton, Juliet Morton of Dialect Writers, who are going to be discussing participation. My name's Tish Camp, and I'm the founder and executive producer of the Poets Live. The Poets Live is a platform for poets, poetry, discussion, exchange and participation. It will be providing a regular platform for all things poets and poetry, our observations on life and our hopes for us all, not just poets, but a clear perspective on the impact poets can and do make in the world. I'm delighted to be able to provide the second in this set of discussions of 4 to the Poets Live with the Poet Laureate Z.D. Dix and Juliet Morton across 4 themes which cover inclusivity, gender, dyslexia, which we had last week, and this one today, which is participation. I'm excited to welcome you both, and we'll be having some questions from the floor as well as your own discussion. I'll go off screen and I'll come back later and leave you to it.
Cheers.
Thanks
very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So first of all, because I thought, like I mentioned briefly to you before, my hand waves in from the camera quite a lot, so I apologise for that in advance. So I understand, obviously, from my own activities and things like that, that you're involved with dialect. You set that up, I presume.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. From the information I've read and whatnot. First of all, before we get into anything else, I want to ask you a little bit about that and just want you to outline the kind of stuff you do, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. Shall I tell you a little bit about kind of where it came from and why I set it up? Because I think
please do. Yeah,
relevant really to what we want to talk about. So I started taking my own writing seriously probably about 12 years ago or so, and for a really long time I was living that dream of kind of wanting to be a novelist, and I was writing a novel, and I was kind of writing mainly in prose. It's only about 2 or 3 years ago that I actually realised I'm actually a poet, which I'm very pleased I had that realisation. But anyway, so I've been writing for a long time, and I grew up in Gloucestershire, grew up in Cirencester.
Yeah.
But I moved away for a really long time, and my day job is actually working in international development. So I went off and went and sort of lived all over the place. I lived in China, Nigeria, Rwanda. I spent a lot of time in places like Bangladesh, Cameroon, Cambodia. And then when I came back to the UK, I settled for a while in London. And that was when I really started taking my own writing seriously. And I could walk out of my door in Peckham and walk into town 20 minutes, and I could sit in a room with a kind of an award-winning writer and kind of like absorb all their amazing advice about craft and how to write and what to do to make your writing better. Because I almost like absorb it by osmosis. It was kind of amazing. It was just literally at my fingertips. And I did like a part-time MA at Goldsmiths, and during that time, my dad died sadly actually, and I decided to move back home with my partner and start a family. And so when I got to Gloucestershire, I started scoping around for writing communities that I could get involved in, and I just couldn't find anything at the time. I did eventually, but it took me a really long time. It took me about 2 years to find a group. And what I found was that there are lots of critique groups, especially around, but it's really hard to find out about them. A lot of them are offline, and they're really like, a lot of them are very long established groups that have been going for ages, and they're quite hard to get a space on them. And the dynamics changed quite a lot. But it just really, really struck me how little there was available. I just thought, God, I've come from this amazing situation where I've just got anything I want really, and I come here, and I just thought that was a bit unfair. And so that people, just because they're living in a rural or more rural area, they can't get access to really good opportunities to develop their craft, because we're all apprentices, aren't we? I mean, I'm learning.
Absolutely, lifelong apprentices.
Right, exactly. And I kind of like, I never want to sort of stop that learning, and I always want to engage with different types of things to do with developing my craft. So the idea for Dialect actually came about quite a few years ago, and it's bubbling away in the back of my head, but I had babies and I just didn't have the capacity to do anything at all. And then last year, actually, Paper Nations gave me like a tiny bit of seed funding. So that's they call themselves a creative writing incubator, for anyone who doesn't know, and they're based down at Bath Spa University. And they gave me like a tiny bit of money, which allowed me to get the website set up and to run like a few workshops. I just did a little summer school last summer, just to dip my toe in the water and just go, okay, I think this is a good idea. Does anybody else think it's a good idea? And that was sort of where it got going, really. And I didn't make a big splash of song and dance about starting it, really. And that all went really well. And then I really started to get momentum when I partnered with Stroud Book Festival in November, and that helped me to sort of connect with their audience and the kind of a like-minded, interested audience based in Gloucestershire, like particularly around Stroud, which is where I'm based. So that's sort of where it came from, really. And then I applied for some Arts Council money. I asked writers kind of, well, what do you want? I don't just want to assume that I know what you want. I asked writers, I ran a survey, and I got a lot of information back from people, and a very loud, clear message saying, yes, we do want some courses and workshops, but what we really want is mentoring. People want that sort of intensive help and support for their work. And I do think rural writers actually are quite an independent bunch. And I mean, I speak to myself when I say that. And I think the reasons why mentoring really appeals, because it means you can kind of really crack on with a focus on your own work. I applied for Arts Council funding and, you know, amazingly got it, which is brilliant. So that's one of the things that we're doing now, and that's really going to help Dialect to grow a bit as well. So we're offering the mentoring scheme, but also got a bit of space and time to like look at how to make the whole venture like a bit more sustainable. Because I do it.
So within that, then, what do you think? Well, sorry, I'm trying to frame this in a way to try and understand your interpretation of mentor, because I think that's quite important, especially for writers, because you can have mentors for different areas, but writing mentors are very specific. So I was wondering, what do you envision a writing mentor to be? What does that mean for the mentee, I suppose?
Well, for that particular, I think it really varies depending on where you're at as a writer in your journey.
Yeah.
For this particular scheme, we've decided to support writers who are quite close to publication, like of their first book.
Okay.
Whether that's like a novel or a poetry collection or a poetry book. So that's what we've done on this occasion, is like help people who need that sort of, that little bit of encouragement. Like self-belief is a massive thing for writers, and especially if they're isolated and they haven't got that like writing community support. They kind of need that encouragement and that nurturing and that kind of final like, oh, go on, you know, leg up, you know, style sort of thing. So that's what we're doing with that particular thing. But that doesn't mean to say that's what mentoring always is. I mean, I think it can be a lot more informal than that. It can be a lot more about developing specific aspects of your craft, or like thinking about how you might want to develop your career, your overall career as a writer. I mean, that is part of what we're doing as well, is helping people to sort of action plan a little bit, you know, especially if they're wanting to make a living out of it.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so is Dialect geared towards people who've already got an interest, or is it tailored as well for people who've just starting out and just starting their writing career, I suppose?
Yeah, we've got different sort of levels. So we've got the mentoring scheme, we've got a residency scheme as well, which I can talk about in a bit. But we've also got like a regular like poetry course that runs at the moment, which is for anybody, any level. And also, I think this is an important one, is a regular monthly critique group, which everybody can join. And that group, we've got kind of, you know, published authors on it and playwrights and poets. But we've also got people who've like literally written one poem and that's all they've ever done. or like they're dabbling and they just want to try it out and explore. And in those sort of situations, I just think if you can hold a space where everybody feels welcome and encouraged, and it's the kind of spirit of like critical friendship, so you don't let people get away with like crappy writing, you kind of like challenge them to improve their practice.
Yeah.
But like, equally, like you don't make them feel like together, you don't make them leave the group with their tail between their legs at the end of the session. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because a lot of what drives a writer is ego. Let's be honest about it. You know, you need a confident, you know, you need a bit of an ego to push you. I mean, obviously you need to keep that in check as well.
And yet our lives are full of rejection.
Yeah, that's part of it. You've got to have an ego to handle that rejection, I think, to a certain degree.
That's true.
Yeah. But I find it quite interesting that the idea. I've always struggled with this in terms of the stuff I've read about workshops and how to formulate workshops and that kind of thing. And I've always liked the idea of having, like a multi-skilled group. In other words, beginners and experienced writers in the same group. But with critique, I find it interesting to when you're saying about the different levels being critiqued at the same time. How do you manage that?
Well, I'm quite a disciplinarian actually when it comes to managing feedback, because I want to encourage everybody. Because most people who come to a group, right, they're a reader first. They've fallen in love with literature. They've fallen in love with words, either as a kid or as an adult. Everybody's got their favourite book. So I think no matter who you are in terms of your experience of writing, you're a reader first and foremost, and that is right and proper. And so I think everybody will always have something to contribute to somebody else's writing. And so I do ensure in a group that everybody says something about other people's work, and just keep it quite simple with kind of, what did you like? What do you think they could perhaps think about doing better? And I have a rule in my groups as well that if you're going to talk about something else somebody could do better, you have to make a suggestion. I just say I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the dangers of workshops. People just saying I don't like that. Well, that's not good enough. You need to say why, and you need to say how it can be improved. I mean, otherwise it's just to be negative for the sake of being negative, isn't it? Really, it's a tricky thing to manage. So I've got a few questions, if it's all right, just obviously touching on some of this stuff. Sorry, I'm just trying because it seems like a natural place, really. So so you're offering these workshops, you're offering these critiques and things like that. You're offering these different sessions, which is great. But what physical blocks are there for people to want to get there, and also the creativity for the different people in those groups? So you said about different levels, but what kind of barriers are there? Do you think that everyone's got to overcome? Because if you're putting everyone in the same group, which is essentially what you're doing, which is good, how are you going to meet their needs within that?
Well, I offer Dialect currently offers like different types of workshops, so they tend to be self-selecting, to be honest. So
okay.
The general critique group that I've got is perhaps much more of a mixed bag, and then the poetry course that we currently run tends to be people who are quite serious about their poetry and are publishing already on a regular basis, or want to publish or have been writing for quite a while. And that we didn't ask for that. That's just how it sort of works out in terms of who will up and find up to stuff. But I think in terms of barriers to participation, I think if we were having this conversation a year ago, it would be quite different to the conversation that we're having today. And I can my own like personal experience. So one of the key barriers is definitely, I mean, finance and stuff. We can get onto that in a minute, and the cost of things. And the quality as well, but also geography is like a major issue. I mean, as a mum living in a rural area, mum of young children, it was hard for me to. I remember trying to come to your sessions actually in Gloucester, just trying. I think I managed to come once. It was so difficult for me to get out of the house at that time of the day and get over there. I mean, getting out of the house full stop really. And that was a major barrier. Now, with everything opening up online, I think that's been one of the massive benefits of lockdown, and that kind of opening up of the online space and that recognition that actually we can communicate across the distance. I've forged some absolutely brilliant friendships online with people I've never even met. I don't even know how tall they are.
Is that important?
Well, I don't know. I just think it's really funny that I kind of, created all these relationships and networks that are completely virtual, but I never ever would have done that without the benefit of lockdown, having lockdown. So I'm thinking currently about how do we move beyond that. Like lockdown, we can see the end is in sight now, and we can think about start thinking about meeting up again in person at some point. And it's really on my mind at the moment. Actually, it's like, okay, dialect. There are other things that people can access. What's dialect going to offer that's sort of different? And it is very much about working in that rural space. And you know, how do we kind of get to people? And how do we overcome some of those geographical barriers and some of that isolation?
So what does participation mean to you though within that?
Well,
how do you see people how do you see people participating in the future?
Online and face to face. I think there's no doubt about it that the online will remain and be part of whatever dialect does going forward. To help open up access. So participation to me is first and foremost about access to good opportunities. And it's been really important for dialect right from the get-go to offer really good quality workshops, but also kind of like have inclusion as a kind of really core sort of principle. So one of the things that I've done is offer pay what you can on almost everything that we've done. In fact, pretty much everything that we've done. And people are very honest about that. Actually, they genuinely will pay what they can. And if they can't pay anything, you know, they're still very welcome to kind of come along. But participation for me isn't only about access. It is definitely all about genuine engagement and participation. So helping people to kind of giving people the skills that they need to engage. So like we were talking a minute ago about giving feedback. So quite a bit of what I do, especially when a group is forming, is talking about how do we give feedback to each other and how do you participate properly in a group to create that kind of community sort of spirit.
Yeah.
And like another aspect of participation for me is about achievement for people. It's like, how are you helping them to learn and develop and grow and progress? And sort of so giving people like leg ups. I know I keep saying that, leg up, but like giving people leg ups along the way, giving them opportunities, pointing them to opportunities, saying, have you seen this? They're open to submissions, so get some work in. Just sort of encouraging and supporting people. But I think there's it's become really obvious since setting dialects up that there's an audience that is really easy to reach around Stroud and Gloucestershire, who are quite well off. And it's quite easy to access those people and to get them to access dialect. So a big question for me is, how do you reach beyond that to people who think that something like this isn't for them?
That's the next one. That's what I was going to ask next, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and so, I mean, one of the ways I'm sort of approaching this is by getting in touch with local groups who perhaps do have like networks and contacts. It's a work in progress because I am literally a one-woman band and I'm a volunteer doing what I do. So it's kind of slowly but surely. But the intention is very much like a very core part of what I'm trying to do with dialect.
Yeah.
Reaching out to those, you know, especially younger audiences, audiences from like marginalised communities, whether that's LGBTQI or BAME. And it's something that I've got a little advisory group now for dialect, and it's something that we talk about regularly when we meet, is how best to kind of be as inclusive as possible to encourage that participation, and how you sort of go about doing that, and how you just be the diversity that you want to see.
Yeah, I think it's well, one thing is obviously I've noticed is to offer things, but I think sometimes offering things isn't, you know, offering opportunities isn't enough. You've got to go out and reach out into the community, and that's the hard part, I find. Because you can say, oh, I tried, but there was no response, but that's not enough. I'm saying from personal experience. I'm not just it's not a thing point exercise, but anyways, you know, I've tried reaching out into the community many times, but it doesn't mean I'm going to stop. It just means I've got to try different tactics to do that. I'm trying to engage currently in it to engage with schools and things, and I've had a little bit of success with that, but there's still more that needs and can be done with that. So I do empathise that it's quite a tricky thing to do, but the thing is, I think
getting up for it though.
Sorry.
Challenge that I'm totally up for, though, you know.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah. And you can engage through schools. There's like things that you can get, there's networks you can work through, like schools, but also libraries. But what about people who don't use those libraries? And what about like young people who aren't in school anymore? How do you sort of reach out to them and give them something that they actually want?
Yeah, and that's the tricky thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, Tish is back. She's got headphones out. What's going on, Tish? You okay? What's going on?
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to say, just wanted to come in because that was a really, really good point that you both made about how, I've got the headphones on for the live on the Facebook, but wanted to say the difficulty that you're both facing, but, with trying to engage and get to those communities that are, harder to reach, etc. A one-woman band and the phrase, be the diversity that you want to see, I thought was brilliant point. And really, as well, Ziggy, although you've been trying as well, this platform is yet another form of participation and ways of getting access to people, particularly those that can't get about, haven't got the money to get about, haven't got transport to get about, etc. Or find it difficult to engage for all other kinds of reasons, So I'm hoping that this platform and the way that you're using it will be the diversity that we want to be, that we're offering that. I'll be quiet now and go back again, but there's more comments and love hearts and likes on the live.
That's weird. I can't see it, so.
Yes, we've got a few watchers. Hold on, there's a question. I'll give one now. From Jason Conway.
Hi, Jason.
Do you feel that social media makes it harder to reach people today or easier?
I'll let you go first.
And he's just said, well said, Tish.
Well,
so harder or easier with social media today?
It is easier, but I would say it's an uphill struggle, like trying to find the capacity that you need, like basically the time and the skills that you need to promote whatever it is that you're doing. Not for egotistical reasons, but for the reason that you want to reach out to as many people as possible and let it be known about what you're doing. I've been quite surprised since I started Dialect how much energy and effort that takes, and then to get stuff out there, but then also to actually get people to engage with stuff, that's a different story. And I put legwork into building personal relationships with people. Get those conversations going.
Yeah. It's tricky because I completely agree. I mean, one of the barriers barrier is by putting things online and pushing things online and promoting. It does take a hell of a lot of energy to do that, but it is a useful platform to do. But then, I'm split to a certain degree between my work as a writer, which is one thing, and my work, on the other side is a laureate, which is I'm all about, like pushing writing for everyone on one side, and on the other side, I'm trying to hone my craft to a fine point on the other, which doesn't often there is a discrepancy within that. Because my writing isn't all inclusive and it isn't for everyone, but I know that. But equally, I want the message to be for everyone. So I don't see, but the problem is I find that some often gives mixed messages to a certain degree, and that's a bit awkward. But
I think the other thing is though that actually they require two different headspaces.
Yeah, massively.
The person who facilitates other people's writing and supports the growth of writing communities is a really different headspace than actually focusing down on your own work and following your own creative flow. And trying to do both alongside each other is definitely a challenge.
I think what I'm trying to get at is sometimes people see the writing head or the writing hat on it, and they assume that kind of aspect is the same as the kind of promoting kind of stuff, which doesn't always tally up, which is tricky if you're trying to promote both at the same time, perhaps. I don't know, but again, that's potentially a barrier for communication, I guess.
That's a whole other Facebook Q&A live thing, like that, juggling those different roles.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. That's why I kind of steered some stuff out and delegated a little bit, because honestly, the sharing stuff online is great because you can reach more and more people, but the time to do that eats into other things, which, as you know, as a parent, you want to live your life as well at the same time, right? So you want to get that balance is particularly difficult, I find sometimes. So what do you think? So going back to the blocks and things. Oh, sorry, Tish is back. You're right, Tish.
Yeah, I'm doing good. We've got a few more people watching. I just wanted to ask if the panelists would like to say hello to the viewers. If you can't see them there, but I'm just letting you know that they're there. And if you would like to ask them to participate in asking questions.
Absolutely. If you've got questions, I'd love to hear them. And hopefully, I'd like to think Juliet would like to hear them as well. Because ultimately, this is an opportunity to find out what barriers you face. So if you have barriers to your work or to the way you write or to be involved, please ask questions so we can see if we can overcome them together in this space.
I'd really like to hear, but I'd really like to hear about what people think they need.
Yes.
As writers, like, you know, writers based in Gloucestershire or where, you know, anywhere really. Just what do they think they need to help them to sort of elevate their work?
Yeah, because one of the things about being a mentor is the fact that you're not pushing your agenda. You're offering support for what the person wants to do, isn't it? So oftentimes that's kind of the wrong path some people go down, trying to be helpful, say try this, try this, try this. In actual fact, sometimes it's just a case of what do you want to do, and let me help you get there.
Yeah.
But obviously, sometimes in being enthusiastic and trying to push people as far as they can go, you might be steering them in the wrong way. So I think it's absolutely right that the people should come forward and say, well, what do you want? You know, how can we help you? I think that's the main thing, isn't it?
Well, often they're their best, you know, their own best advocates. They know their needs best.
Yeah.
Express it.
Well, it's essentially person-centered planning, isn't it? So it's centering the kind of things, the work you're doing around the person's needs, which is great. Oh, Tish is back. Hello, Tish.
I just wanted to say we've got a message from Rhoda Thomas.
Hello, Rhoda.
A message from Rhoda Thomas. It was around social media. Social media allows people and poets to replay and listen and get feedback, etc., in ways that don't happen in the real situation.
The real situation.
Jason Conway's also said, creating opportunities for growth in your craft, which is what you are both striving to achieve.
That's the plan.
That will you discuss?
Discuss. It's all good. Yeah, it's a tricky thing. I mean, sorry, I'm very aware that I'm waffling. I don't want to think I'm speaking over, but anyways, but I do think it's important that the whole point of engagement is to get out there and get your voice heard. Equally, to push that message of inclusion, because the current kind of climate politically, I'm not going to go into that, but it can be very restrictive, and more voices need to be heard. So if there's a chance for writers that haven't had opportunities to come forward, it's important. It's one of the reasons why I set up the GPS. It's one of the reasons why I set up the Gloucester Poetry Festival. It's because, quite frankly, as you said earlier, when you were looking around, you couldn't find anything. Like 15 years ago, I couldn't find anything in Gloucester. I mean, there might have been something popping up somewhere, but I was just writing for the sake of writing because I wanted to do something. But there was nothing. It was a barren landscape. I mean, we've got in Gloucestershire, we've got a hell of a history of poetry.
Right. Yeah.
But I couldn't find anything, and I was like, well, why can't I find anything? And that might be my fault because I wasn't looking hard enough. But equally, I thought, well, when I got to a certain position, I thought, well, actually, I'm a bit more confident now. A bit more, I wouldn't say savvy, but a little bit more determined. I thought, you know what, I'm gonna have a look around, and if I can't find something, I'm gonna make something. And that's the attitude, I think, sometimes that inclusivity. If you can't find it, make it happen, create opportunity.
Well, see, this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well, is about like that sort of system. So like there isn't any, you were looking, you couldn't find anything. I was looking, I couldn't find anything. But there is, supposed to be a national network of literature development agencies that are supposed to support people like us who are looking for things. Right. But there's a big but there, which is to say that literature works. So, you know, they're great, and you know, I'm hoping Dialect was going to partner with them in the near future, and that's all fantastic. But they're based in Exeter. Like, that's at least a 2-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive from where we are.
A while away.
Right, it's a long way, and I think basically, you know, if you live in Bristol, you're really lucky. You've got loads of really exciting things going on. Cheltenham's got its literature festival. It's only once a year. It's also very expensive to access. A lot of people just cannot afford Cheltenham Literary Festival. So you've got this kind of gap between sort of Bristol and basically like Birmingham, where there's, you said, a bit of a wasteland, and Litworks themselves completely recognise this, that they don't have any provision really for anything going on in what they call the upper southwest.
Yeah.
So we fall through the cracks, you know, and there is basically, in that respect, like we talk a lot at the moment about structural inequality. That is structural inequality in terms of like access to literary arts and development.
I do need to, sorry, just to interject slightly, because I don't want to cause offence, because I know Anna Saunders does a lot for Cheltenham poetry.
I wanted to mention Anna, actually.
Yeah, because otherwise I don't want her to think, actually, I do loads of stuff, because I know she does loads of stuff.
She does, and I wanted to mention Anna as a bit of a shining light. I think, absolute godsend. I think what she does is brilliant, and what she continues to do, and the way she's developing the Cheltenham Poetry Festival stuff is absolutely brilliant. There's, you know, it's fantastic. I think it's a pity there's nothing equivalent for prose writers. So I think there is still, you know.
Yeah, you can only do so much, I guess.
We wouldn't expect like one organisation to do, you know, to cover all of the genres.
It's a very tricky thing, isn't it? Sorry, Tisha's back again. Sorry.
I've got some more feedback from the floor at Facebook.
Excellent.
So again, we're going back to some social media points. Poets can watch their own performance on video. Like, this is the plus of having social media, you know, the ease now of having social media. And then poets, and they can send the video on to others. So this is all, you know, a fabulous thing. Again, that's from Rhoda Thomas. And then Steve Tiddle says he's finding the conversation interesting, as sometimes his most popular works on social media are not necessarily his best works. Am I selling my soul? Laughing face. So I'm glad that we're getting some good feedback. I do apologise for interjecting. I'm finding a nice point here and there to interject. I don't want to stop the flow, but I equally don't want to leave people behind.
It's nice to hear these things, Tish, because I want to know what people think. So sorry, I'm just being greedy. But I like to hear these things because you get an idea.
I'm going to ask again. We've got some new viewers now. We've got about 25 minutes left. Brian Franco watching from the United States.
Hello.
Brian, if there's anything you'd like to share with the panel around participation or ways of that improving, or your own experience of it as a writer, please do share. Rhoda Thomas has already left a message. Ziggy Dix is here with JLM Morton of Dialect Writers, and their support and encouragement, as particularly because the conversation is about participation, asking for yours is very much encouraged right now. One more question from Rhoda Thomas. What is best? Accessibility, literary quality, political impact?
That is a hell of a loaded question.
I'm going to put the kettle on while you discuss and give feedback.
Oh, Rhoda, what are you doing to me?
I mean, I don't know. Go on, you go, Ziggy, you go first.
Oh God. Well, first off, I mean, you've got accessibility, you've got the critical stuff, you've got the accessibility, and you've got the politics, and they're three different strands, but they can be intermingled. There have been some very public poems that very recently that have had a massive political impact, but haven't been critically very good. I'm not going to name names because I don't think that's particularly helpful, but I've seen them online and in news media, but they've not been very, critically very good. But they've had political impact, which is important, and they've had a massive, range of accessibility within them. So it's tricky because if you want to access as many people as possible, it's got to touch as many people as possible, which means there's going to be issues around critical thinking, I suppose, because you don't want to alienate your audience, and obviously you want to include as many people as possible. You can't necessarily have the most complex language and things involved with that. But having a political message is, does poetry need to have a political message? Some would argue yes, some would argue no. I don't know. That's above my pay grade, I think. But I think accessibility is, I think the two things that hand in hand are accessibility and critical engagement. I think those two things. And somewhere along the line, there's a sweet spot when they interject. And I think that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think for me, I mean, basically, you know, whether it's about your reach or whether it's about the quality of your work, or whether it's about the political impact, it comes down to what your intention is and what you're hoping to achieve right from the beginning. And I think it's extremely, like, it's a very rare thing when you get like the Venn diagram of
they all merge,
total success, and they all merge, you know. And I think that, I don't know, we could talk a long time about the political impact of poetry. I think like the way poetry works is, I think, you know, you'll get a lot of spoken word, you know, work that will have like a really big political impact, but it's quite often preaching to the converted. But it's the capacity, because of the nature of the delivery of spoken word. You know, you'll even see it on a Halifax ad now, won't you? Spoken word.
Yeah.
And it's a very popular art form, and it's brilliant. You know, I don't do spoken word, but I absolutely love being an audience member, and I think that's got the capacity to have more of a kind of a broader political impact probably than page poetry sometimes, because the audience of page poetry is probably smaller. But having said that, I think like if you get really good quality page poetry, it has a very deep, narrow but deep impact on people. And I think it is that kind of thing that people will often, you know, people return to poetry, don't they? When people die, when they get married, when people are born, you know, the key
ritual.
the rituals. It's actually exactly, and there's really important milestones in our lives. And I think that is a testament really to the power of poetry and how much it means to us and how we sort of feel it informs the very fabric of our being. And so I do think that, you know, it has got the capacity and does have an impact on people, but it might just, the reach might not just be as wide. So I think it's impossible to say which one is more important, reach, quality, or like political impact, because I think it depends on the scenario. It depends who's writing the poetry, who the audience is, what you're trying to achieve with it. But it's a really interesting thing to explore.
Just to touch on that, I just had a thought. I mean, I can't remember who said it now. I'm probably going to get myself into trouble, but I didn't say this, but this is me paraphrasing. That someone said that poetry exists in every culture, in history. So within that itself, that means that it has significance, and it has accessibility, and it has range. But I think it does come down to that Venn diagram. When it hits that sweet spot, you know, you're going to just center line it straight through, and it's going to hit everyone at the same time. But again, it's that ritual side of it, I think. That ritual element of it. When a public event happens, when a funeral, when a birth, whichever it is, it's signified by ritual, whether it be like a prayer, whether it be a poem. But that's ingrained into cultures all over the world. Sorry.
For me, that's really deeply connected to political impact.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so.
But it's politics if it's not about our way of life, you know, and that's also what ritual is about. You know, the building block.
It's tough.
Yes, you're back.
I'm coming in to interject with some more from the floor. That's going to be my strap line now. Some more from the floor. Poetry targeted at specific groups can be helpful. And Rhoda, I hope that was it sounded like a fabulous discussion in answer to accessibility, literary equality, and political impact. Poetry targeted at specific groups can be helpful. And Jason Conway said, the pandemic has been a huge boost. Inclusion with a wealth of online events available, bringing people together internationally. And I can contest to that, being a global Zoom poet with ease now, with ease. So those are two other points there. and I'll let you get back to discussion. I'm sorry for these interjections from me. And the 20-second delay, because I've got the headphones in listening to previous answers or discussive points that you're making, and then coming back in the tail end of the end of another one. So apologies for my interjections if that stops your flow. And we've got about 15, 17 minutes left.
Okay. So yeah, so I've got a few other things I want to touch on. So so this is a double header, I suppose. So what is the impact of blocks to participation remaining? Okay, personally and for society, do you think? Do you think that touches on the political side of it there as well?
That's the question.
Right. What is the impact of blocks? So blocks to participation remaining for you personally, so this is you as a writer, but also for the society. So
if I start with the social, I think the impact of blocks is that we don't get enough diversity in the voices that we hear.
Okay.
About poetry. I mean, I've got a very, very diverse taste. I don't know if it's taste, but you know, I read very, very, very widely. But I think that there's always space for more voices. And I think that is the impact. You know, ultimately, we don't hear different voices if we don't remove those blocks of participation. For me personally, I think the thing that I find challenging is finding the time, but also having the tools to develop my own audience. You know, you sort of talked at the beginning about being a writer being an egotistical thing. That is true, but equally, I hate promoting my own work. I hate it, and I find that a barrier to me.
Yeah, massively, yeah.
Working out how to get over that barrier of self-promotion and doing it in a way that feels comfortable. Because ultimately, why do you write? You write, for me, it's definitely a compulsion, and it's obviously a desire to communicate and connect with people. Is that how do you do that? How do you connect with people in a way that doesn't feel like you're trying to like sell them something, or you know,
feel authentic, I suppose.
Yeah, right, exactly. How about you?
Well, I'm terrible at promotion, so of myself. Anyway, I like to promote other people. I don't mind doing that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I was raised by my grandparents, and you know, taught not to kind of be too self-promotion. You know, too about work and things. It's like, well, okay, if people want to know, they want to know, and they'll have a look when they're ready, whatever. But if they don't, that's okay as well. But I personally have to get over that and just sell. You know, be a bit more candid about it, but that's a barrier for me, and I think that's a barrier for quite a few writers as well, because you know, you don't want to be that person shouting out saying, look at this, but then I saw something the other day and I thought, actually no, I said, well, you know, you shouldn't be afraid to boast about your own work. And I don't mean that sense of arrogance, I mean that sense of, if you've done something and you've done it well, acknowledge it publicly, you know, don't be afraid to say that. And I don't mean just for the sake of selling stuff, because that's something else. I think selling yourself is something else, which is a bit strange for me, but being proud and being acknowledging and boastful of your own work because you're proud of it, because you know that it's good, it's something different. And I think more people in Britain especially should be able to do that confidently, because there's so much good work out there that isn't, you know, say for yourself saying, I don't feel comfortable doing that, but being proud of your work and being confident is a barrier in itself. So I think once a week we should give ourselves a kick in the butt and just to put something out to say, we're doing good stuff over here, come and have a look.
Yeah.
So that's a barrier. So it's good to acknowledge that.
Can I add something here? I think there's some major cultural and gender specific barriers as well.
Yeah, definitely.
That we have to contest with. Yeah. You know, I know, for example, my own family household when I was young was, and I think, I don't know, maybe an Irish thing as well. My mum, don't blow your trumpet in a big way, and particularly like as a girl, like certain achievement, like the sexism within certain achievements. Oh, you're doing very well at doing whatever it was, sewing, cooking, cleaning, whatever, but anything else might be not frowned upon exactly, but you can deal with that later. Mm-hmm. You can do the other stuff first. So this gender conditioning becomes, I believe, becomes something that we as women holding in, it's like in our DNA, it's imprinted in us to not blow our trumpets in a big way.
Yeah.
Don't do this, don't do that, because you'll be, and then for people in general, men and women, maybe in England, Britain, you know, British English culture, don't pat yourself on the back, don't do this, don't do too much of that, because it seems boastful, arrogant, or whatever, and it isn't any of those things.
No.
And if some people, children, young people, teenagers, adults are in households, and I'm talking familial relationships, so that could be teenagers with parents or siblings, whatever, or husbands and wives or partners that live together. If you have something that you want to share and you think it's a blow your own trumpet moment to do, you know, and you've got an environment, say, that isn't as supportive, then you will learn to keep that quiet.
Definitely.
And that's a really hard place to be. So I'm trying to, you know, big up those that are in those environments to say, find places where that is encouraged. Yeah. Find places where that is going to be encouraged. Find that voice within that says, it's okay that I haven't got that in the family home or in my relationship. Go find other people that will lift you up for those things.
Yeah.
I mean,
and don't feel like it's a hard thing, that it's too it's not womanly or wife-likey or all of these. I'm a bit of a, you know, feminist poet, although I love a bit of cooking. But you know, I think all of these things are so important, so important.
I completely agree with you, Tish, and yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think there is another really important dimension to this, which is about class, and it's about access to opportunities, and it's about knowing what channels you need to leverage in order to promote yourself, and who you need to associate with, or what do you need to do to get your work out there to help you build an audience, so that when you do have, say, some new work to share, there's a waiting audience ready for you. Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of us lack an understanding of because of class, and I think that's a sort of an unspoken issue that we don't sort of talk about, like it.
Class ceilings.
I mean, I want to just share a quick anecdote on my experience at working class girl, London, East End, Cockney, all that, mixed race, Trinidadian, Irish. So I've got it all going on there. And I used to carry a dictionary around with me at school and on the street and in the pubs that I used to frequent underage. And anytime I heard a word, they used to call me the dictionary. Oh, here she comes. It was a slight upon me. Oh, here she comes, the dictionary. Because the people that I was hanging with mostly in my own streets were like, don't get ideas above your station, girl. Yeah. You know, and I was like, what? I think, no, actually, I love this new word. You know, and even teachers were like, oh, we've got to stop. Can you hold on a minute? It's about participation there as well. Hold on a minute. I've just got to look that word up. You want me to follow what your learning is? I'm going to, hold on, miss, please, minute. And it used to aggravate them, but I needed to know. And it was about my participation in the continuation of that learning, or that word, or that the comprehension of what was being given. And I will still do that now. I don't care. If I don't know a word, I'll go, oh, right, hold on a minute. Oh, yeah, go on, I'm with you, you know, and I don't feel any way about it. And I don't think anyone should. Because
no, if you don't, you should challenge. You know, you should challenge that lack of understanding on your own part. That's a part of participation itself. If you don't know something, you should challenge that within yourself and find out. So that's important. I do it every day. I see a word I don't understand, which is quite obvious. That I think, okay, what does that mean? Someone's saying things like, "Well, there's not a word for this particular thing." So okay, well, what could that word be?
Yeah.
You know, like. I'm not going to get too dark on it, but like there's no word for someone if they lose their child, for example. If someone loses a husband or a wife, there's a widow, but there's no word for someone who loses a child. So I thought to myself, what would that word be? And so I looked at Middle English words and things like that, and that would mean loss or stop or something. To try and analyze that, to try and work out what that would be. But the point is, if you're not sure of something, you should check. You should check for yourself. But you should also have the confidence to do that. And you're confident to do that, which you challenged your own parents yourself, which is good.
Well, I mean, my experience in school was I was already being laughed at because I was, you know, in the 1970s, one of 4 black families in the whole street, very minority within the white indigenous groups, population that lived there, Stepney. So I was already being laughed at. So I was thinking, well, I don't care about that. I'm still here with a dictionary. Yeah. And I'm still doing what I need to do. I need to do that. And you know, it's just really hard to do. But I was nervy and then still not confident. I was just defiant about the lack of inclusion.
Defiant means
thinking it was an injustice back then when I was 10, 11, 12. Like that's not right. And if that's not right for me, it's not right for others. It was no surprise I was going to be a youth and community worker.
This is what I wanted to say was that I did youth and community work in my early career as well. You carry these experiences with you into your adult life. One of the things that I'm trying to do with Dialect is provide a positive platform for writers. So I'm trying to create this culture, which I said I mentioned the phrase critical friendship earlier. So it's not about letting people get away with bad writing, about creating an environment where people feel loved and supported and encouraged so that they do their best work and that they feel like they sort of belong to a writing community. And that is so important to me, right? So it's been very important to me right from the start with Dialect, because that's how we go. It's one of the reasons why I set up the residencies as well and the mentoring, to give that like deep and ongoing support to writers, to really give them a chance to sort of have those experiences that will help them to sort of take their work properly next level.
Yeah.
I've got one question. I've got one final question because I think we're running low on time, I think. But I've got, so my kind of final official question, I suppose, is what's the best way then to challenge inequality in participation?
What's the best what?
Best way to speak. Sorry, the best way to, I got that trip over my own tongue. What's the best way to challenge inequality in participation?
There's loads of different ways to do that. I think it's partly about awareness raising and community based, like community level work, reaching out to communities, that sort of stuff. I think it's about advocacy as well, like advocating for inclusion more broadly. So doing that on quite a public platform, leveraging your social media to do that kind of thing if you've got the capacity. So I think there's lots of different ways that you can tackle that. I think offering things like subsidised places on courses and workshops, that really helps. You know, providing that pay what you can option on every workshop that you're offering. You know, you're offering 14 places, 4 of them are pay what you feel or more or whatever. Looking at different ways around the problem. I think that whole thing about being the diversity you want to be as well, kind of like you can't be what you can't see thing. So representation is really important. So like right from the start with Dialect, I've had like writers from all different walks of life and, you know, backgrounds, and, you know, they identify in different ways, and having them sort of leading workshops and getting involved in workshops, being mentors, that kind of thing, and sort of making it, without even having to say it, making it hopefully clear that it's a
I've got two more points from the floor, Facebook floor. Rhoda Thomas again. Are we promoting ourselves just to bring in money or increase our own exposure? Or are we selling because we believe our poetry has a value for others? Doesn't this link again to our purpose in writing, e.g. to break down isolation, to add your voice in solidarity, to inform others, to share healing, etc.?
Hang on a second. Does Rhoda think there's money in poetry?
Barking at the wrong tree there.
Then there's a further point she makes. Totally agree about cultural conditioning, especially for women who are often encouraged into self-silencing. I was brought up to be seen and not heard. Making others uncomfortable is not a traditional female occupation. We're supposed to make people feel okay. And just to let you know, people that are watching, that Rhoda Thomas will be here talking about gender in April with Ziggy again at the Poets Live. So, and she said, certainly not in regards to money. For the poetry, do you think there's money to be made? Certainly not. But I'm really in touch with all the participation that people are having on the floor. Thank you for allowing mine in this as well. So I'll leave those points with you with the last 3 minutes that we have.
Yeah, no worries, it's all good. Yeah, so I was just going to say, well, I've actually lost track of what I was going to say, to be honest with you. There's so many things going on. I've always had an open door policy on inclusivity and whatnot. So I've always thought, well, if you want to get involved, be involved. But that's kind of the tricky part of this, I suppose.
Yeah, especially if people lack confidence.
Yeah.
Encourage those who lack confidence. One of our mentees, actually, she's an amazing writer, and we selected her as soon as we saw her work. We're like, we've got to work with this person. She's absolutely incredible. And I found out yesterday she's never ever been to a workshop.
Well, that's good and bad in a way, because you managed to get her first.
She's never sent her work out before.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just sort of extraordinary. It's like, you know, it's sort of amazing. It's good in a way, like you say, but it's also a bit, it almost made me feel sort of quite sad in a way that obviously she hasn't felt, and she says it's lack of confidence, you know. And yeah, it's how do you encourage those?
Well, they're with, you know, that person's with you now, so that's going to hopefully overcome that barrier, you know, and that's what it's about. As for course, I think Rhoda was mentioning about what's the purpose of writing. It was one, to make money, I suppose, or one for the message. On your personal level, I suppose it's whatever you want to write, whatever the poem's about, isn't it? Surely. If you're going to get sales, you're going to get sales based on other factors beyond the actual poetry itself, to a certain degree.
I think the money though as well, it's not an end in itself, it's a means to it enables you to write more. You know, if you're able to ever make any money out of anything writing related, it's just to support your practice. I think how you trying to write.
So, yeah, because most poets generally subsidise their own work with poetry, don't they? So
okay. So I'm going to say that we're coming to the end now of discussion on participation. Not enough time, really. I think we could have done a whole half-day workshop on this with breakout rooms and such, etc. Be really good to take forward. And I think what I would like to share really about this event today is that it's been a great experience in participation in a technological manner as well. It's been really good. We made great use of Facebook Live to try and get people to feel included and to participate. Although I might have been a bit pushy, share your questions now. Hurry up, share. And I might need to take something from that. So I wanted to say thank you to you both for a really interesting conversation today. And that if people would like to find further information about dialect writers, they can on Facebook at
Dialect Writers, or just go straight to our website, which is dialect.org.uk.
Okay, thank you. And also for ZD Dix, Ziggy Dix, who's the Gloucestershire Poet Laureate, you can find him at
Ziggy the Poet on Twitter.
Ziggy the Poet on Twitter.
Yeah, at Ziggy the Poet.
And do come back again for Poets Live discussions. Next week will be a discussion with Shruti Shukla. She's a poet promoter at Itch It Out, and she's at Glasgow University. Discussion is all on inclusivity, and it's a very inclusive environment. Lots of good discussion around best practice and ways forward. And I'd like to thank you both for being here. In regards to any marketing that anyone needs, these are the platforms and these are the ways to go, and do contact me. Okay, it's a little plug. All right, bless you all, and I'm glad. Thank you very much, everyone on Facebook following. Please follow for next week's event.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. Stay there. We can all talk, but I'm going to stop the live now. But just stay here for a sec.